what you're telling me? I need to do that.
No, I mean, quite frankly, we can just use our phones. These
That's
new
amazing.
the
Yeah.
computer phones and Apple phones are great. But all right, hey everybody, welcome back to another
Good morning.
episode of Take an E. I'm Scott Tucker here with Mike Wallace from Blue Water Advisors, and here on this show, or our little chat that Mike and I have every Wednesday or when we're available.
Yeah.
We just talk about the things we're doing with helping military retirees address the various complicated decisions they have to make in post-military life. Obvious one is get a new job. Sometimes it's financial, benefits related, insurance related, but it always has to do with creating more income or securing or protecting sources of income in post-military life. So there's a lot of uncertainty, and created this show really to get the Blue Water message out there more, so that because a particular audience, really the senior leaders that have had 20 plus years in the military and haven't really had a chance to pay attention to what's coming next, and to be able to have an off ramp to make those decisions more confidently and have really data points on those who have gone before, and let alone and the network to be able to reach out to. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Mike, you've been talking to me for months now, about the data you've been collecting and some of the shocking things you've discovered. And I know you have a data scientist you work with, and you're looking at this data. And it's been a few years, and you've had almost 400 members go through. So that's enough data to get, start to get a lay of a land of what you're seeing, maybe how it compares to traditional, career finding programs or not. Maybe we don't have that. Maybe we don't have their data yet, or what the gross averages are. But in general, just to give a picture of what is this going to look like in post-military life, happens to be the Blue Water data set that we're talking about. Obviously, we think if you're going through with Blue Water, there's a good chance you're going to benefit from the data, because, as Mike always says, hey, if we know somebody got hired at this salary for this job, and that's the similar thing you're applying for, then, that can help with negotiating tactics. So, Mike, I'll pass it over to you, how do you want to share this stuff? I know you sent me some graphics and stuff. Do you want me to pop that up yet, or
in a minute as we get to it? Right, your timing is always spot on that stuff. But what I would offer up for the listeners, today is we feel much more comfortable, I would say, right, in the space of transition and career progression and helping our members. As we like to say, Scott, the ocean of goodwill is what we call it, right? There's no shortage of organizations that are out there that claim to have the answer to what, veterans in transition are looking for, right? And, our response to that is because, we have an opinion, right? We were senior leaders and we went through the transition process too. Much like yourself, right? And what I found personally was there's no shortage of people, and just hang with me on the language here, right? But there's no shortage of people or organizations out there that are willing to tell you what they think you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
But yet there is an incredible shortage, right? And lack of credibility of organizations that have the credibility that can tell you how to do it and why, right? So if you just kind of pause for effect here a little bit, but you just kind of absorb that and you're like, hey, think about it. Anybody in the world can give you a list of what they think you need to do, right? But there's very few people that can speak from the high ground, right? Hey, I've been there, I've done this. Here's what, here's been my insight that I'm now bringing back to share with you. And that's what we work very hard here at Blue Water to do, right? You want to go to corporate America, I can help you with that, right? Dave Wadlick runs nonprofits. You want to go to the nonprofit sector, right? We're well connected there too. Steve Weeman in government, contracting, right? Defense, aerospace industry, et cetera, right? We have people in those industries who have been hiring or are hiring managers, right, who have experienced growth and success in those areas. So
Mhm.
what we want to tease out today is aligned with your lead in, right, on the analytics side. And we're very excited about this because if in going in line with the takeaway on credibility, right? I mean, if you start a sentence that sounds something like this: hey, this is my opinion, and based on my opinion, I think, and then fill in the blank, right? As compared to a sentence that maybe starts like this: based on 300 individuals who look just like you over the past 24 months who have experienced this process, here is what they saw analytically.
Mhm.
Right? I mean, just the delivery it's the numbers, it's the math, right? This is the fact. Like, nobody cares really largely what Mike Wallace thinks, right? That nobody does. But when you start these sentences analytically, right, that takes on a different connotation. And so that's a great lead in. So,
Yeah.
last week, right, I had the honor and the pleasure of being invited to go back to San Diego, Commander Naval Air Forces, right there in Coronado, Naval Air Station North Island, and was able to address what we call in the Navy the Major Commanders Training Symposium. And this is where all the Commodores and Air Wing commanders and aircraft carrier commanding officers and all the major commanders in aviation gather. So the 3-star, right, in command at CNAF, Admiral Cheever, who is in command now, he gets a chance to, spend a couple of days with his senior leadership and discuss some of the challenges they're dealing with. And we were fortunate enough to be invited back for our second year at the end of the second day to just talk analytically, right? Just, hey, not selling anything, not pitching anything. Hey, this is what we see. And so I just wanted to share with you, because I think you'll find it interesting too.
Yeah.
The breakout this year was a little bit different than what we put together last year. But just again, it's important when you start talking analytics to define, right, the group set, the data set. So what we will be talking and deriving data from is a group set of 290 individuals, okay, 290 individual data points, which, as you know, is about 80 to 83% of Blue Water's throughput. Do you realize, Scott, as we get ready to start our 5th year in January, we're almost getting close to 400 members that have been through, right?
Wow.
And just for the listeners, 290 data points that we pulled out, yeah, that's about 80 some odd percent of our throughput. But we're all services, not Navy, to include Coast Guard now too. We've got a lot of different data points in the way you can slice and dice this. But in this case, it's 290 data points. And let's just talk quickly on the breakout here. And I'm reading it here, so I apologize. I'm going heads down here. 140 06s, right? So that's about 40% of the group were 06s. 95 05s. So about 27% of that 290 are 05s. 17 04s, which is about 4% of the group that we'll talk about, were 04s. And then about 1%, right, were 03s. And then we did have about 12, interesting dynamic here, 07 and above, right? So we've had 1-star, 2-star, 3 stars going through the program, right? So that's about 4% of the throughput. And then there's, onesies and twosies here and there. So, but that's kind of the group that we talk about, right? And you can see a part of the dashboard that we have here. So, and then when we have members go through, that triggers us to track the rank, the service, right? A little bit on the background, right? Where you came from. So that's how we derive a lot of those numbers. And then we further break it down, right? As members then come through the program, Scott, they spend time with us, and they will eventually find their next success, right? They'll pursue something, and we call it they'll land, right? They will land at some company, right, as they're pursuing, their next success, their next job, if you will. So at that point, we had about 150 landing reports in the system, but I manually crunched about another 20 or 25. So we had about 170 total data points. And so of that 291, you can look at it and go, hey, about 58, almost 60% of them, of that grouping that we'll talk about, they've landed, right? I can tell you they've got a job. They've got a job at either Boeing or Northrop Grumman or Centera Medical or Johnson & Johnson, right? We know where they're at, right? And about 42%, right, is either not yet in their transition window or they have not yet landed. Okay. So that's kind of the grouping and kind of what it looks like, right? And let me just stop right there to see if you've got any questions. I don't want to drone on too long, but I just wanted to frame the data set, right, that we broke out for the discussion.
Yeah, and I think a couple key points based on what you're saying is obviously people are approaching this their own individual situation. You're coaching them along the way, but they're showing up at various times in various states of readiness for this process. So a lot of people are starting before they're even out of the military and haven't even actually began the search yet. They're getting prepped. Even 2 years ahead, you say some people get started, right?
It is, yeah. So, and that makes the data a little bit challenging for us sometimes to extract, right? We'll get into that, and we still think that there's meaningful insight that we can tease out.
But you're saying that, but this landing rate is actually more like 60%. You just hadn't crunched the numbers.
No, that's exactly right. Job landing rate, right, for the 150 that's on there. And keep in mind, this dashboard, for the listeners, this is still a work in progress, right? We just literally finished constructing this dashboard about 2 weeks ago, and it's not representative of the entire Blue Water ecosystem that's uploaded in it. So, and I kind of already alluded in the entry, right? Hey, I had to manually crunch some numbers real quick. We haven't absorbed everything up into the dashboard, but the areas that we have been able to focus and drill in on, some of the results that we're seeing is pretty interesting, right? For example, one of the metrics that we're very interested in, how many days does it take on average for an individual, right, to find their next job, right? And so when individuals do land at their next success, we ask them to send a landing report, and we ask them a number of questions, and they go in there and they fill this information out. And based on those inputs, we then start to extract this. And, you and I have had a number of conversations, and for the listeners out there, data is an interesting thing, right? And so our first approach on this, and when I went back out to San Diego last week and I said, look, of all these 175 landing reports, the 58% of these Navy individuals, of the 290 individuals, right, that have landed, on average, if you just add up all those inputs and divide by the number of inputs that you have, what does it show us? And the number comes out to be, it's about 126, 27 days. There it is in the upper, center there. Average days, 126.27 days. So that even changed really over the last week, because what I briefed out to San Diego was 129 days. It was 4 months, 9 days, which was down from a year ago, because we looked at our previous data over the first 3 years, which was 4 months and 16 days. So it would have been like 140 some odd days, right? 137 days or something like that. So this is, 4 months, 6 days, which again, is a reasonable number, right? A national average, if you look at some of these studies that are out there, the people that jump into big career transitions or progressions, right? Okay, there's a lot of surveys out there. It's anywhere from 5 to 5.5 months, some even as long as 6 months. It's not unreasonable to think that our grouping coming through with the coaching and the network that we have and some of the insights could do it in 4.5 months. That seems reasonable. But when I started looking at the data, Scott, we noted that there was such a large disparity. In other words, some individuals are putting a very, very small number in there saying, hey, they misunderstand the question, right? Hey, I did it in a week. And then there's other individuals go, no, I started this before 2 years, right? Before I got out, and they're putting in like 700 days, right? And I'm like, well, that's not really when you started hard pursuing the company, right? And so I think we've got to start asking the question a little bit better and more focused. So we did what's called this young kid, you'd love him to death. I don't know what he is, 27 years old, right? He's just wicked smart. He's a data analyst, data scientist. And he says, well, he tells me the other day, he says, hey, Mike, what we can do is we can do what's called and he had some name for it. I can't remember. I think it was a Z analysis on the data. And that's basically where you find the average. And then, the further you get away from the average on either side, right? Those are standard deviations, right? And you can figure this out. And he says, what we can do is we can remove up to 2 or 3 standard deviations. So you get the low lows out and you get the high highs out. And so we did that just yesterday. And so instead of saying, hey, it's going to take most members about 126 days to find their next success, once we did that, it was a little over 2 months, right? It was like 60 some odd days. And I think we both agreed that we thought that was a little bit low. So, we're going to continue to tighten this data up. So for the listener out there, if you're a 05 or 06 and you're stepping into this, how long is it going to take you, right? The data is starting to show it's probably going to be somewhere between 2.5 and 4 months. And this is predicated on, like, we think optimally that you do some program, whether it's TAP or Rulin, or if you wanted to attend a Blue Water cohort, right? You have to do this optimally about that 7 to 8 month prior. And then you have to take those lessons learned and the skills that you learned there, and you have to put them in motion at that time. And what I mean by that is, if you started 2 years in advance, Scott, and you did nothing with the lessons that you learned until the day one that you stepped into your terminal leave period, you're probably going to be longer than that average time of pursuit. You with me? Because you're kind of starting over, as opposed to if you just started like maybe 1 month or 2 months prior, but you hit it hard every single day, you might be around the average, right? Optimally, we think it's still that 6 to 8 month window. You need to start, and then you need to take those lessons and slowly work up to, right, your pursuit of your next success. So again, let me stop there and just kind of, that's kind of a strange one. That's an interesting data point. We're going to continue to watch that. A regression model out there, and we're just, we're just going to watch it over time, see if we can tighten up that information.
Well, I think the thing to track here is trends, and your trend is coming down. You said it was, up to one. It was up at 140 days.
Yeah.
A little bit ago, now down to 126, 127. That shows that through your network, you're probably getting a lot of lessons learned, and it's just day by day is going to improve the process for those who are coming along behind. And I think that's something that's the greater military transition process has struggled with, trying to find the solution. Like you said, this is what everybody should do. Translate your military skills to civilian skills, and it's about so much more than that. So trending in the right direction is definitely a good sign to say, hey, we're learning something and we're applying it immediately. And it really goes to like a mindset, right? If you're stepping into your transition or career progression and you're like, man, I really don't know what to expect.
like, here's some analytical data that you could kind of see yourself in this breakout, and you can go, okay, well, I'm
Yeah.
also an 06 and I've done this and I've done this thing. So, hey, all the guys that kind of looked like me that pursued these things, it kind of took them this long, right? I would much rather have a data-filled conversation like that, right? Than just an opinion-based going, well, this is what I think you're going to experience, right? Man, I want to have the data, right? And I
Sure.
think that speaks volumes, right, for getting people in. But, you know, for the listeners and you, right, you get this when you're talking analytics, we know, right, especially when you're talking averages, some people will be able to do it quicker. Some people it will take longer, right? I mean, this
Yeah.
is why we do averages and weighted averages and Z spectrums and standard deviations and some of these things to give us a better understanding, right, of what we're looking at.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think obviously the caliber of folks you're working with, you know, they're going to take responsibility and, you know, knowing that, all right, I've got a target point that'll, you know, give me something to
Yeah.
base it off of. But here's my question. What about those who have already moved on to a second job, gone through this process again? Have you
Yeah.
seen that those individuals, you know, got a little training already and maybe their experience was a little bit easier second
Well,
time around? Or
I'm flipping through this because we actually have some interesting data, right? So we do track that, right? And we
because
track.
that's common, right? Like
Well,
guys either don't, it's not a good fit, or the company had
yeah.
to down. I mean, I would say common, but it happens, of course, that you know
So,
don't.
so just I've got it right off the top of my head, right? So for the listeners out there, again, just don't beat me up hard specifically on the numbers, but just for the sake of making the point, I'm not far off. Let's just say all services, all ranks, 200,000 people a year step into transition. Right, and that's pretty close, right? I mean, 200,000 a year, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less, but that's kind of about what it looks like. Would you believe there's a lot of surveys out there that say just under 50% of that grouping will stay at their first job less than 10 months? Right? I mean, that's kind of amazing, right? I mean, you know, some of them just a handful of months will step in to your point, hey, this is a bad fit, right? And so if you look at this, let's just say 45%, right? You know, so, you know, of 100,000, it's 45,000 people, right? That are, think of the time involved of finding that thing, realizing it's a bad fit, and now you're thrust right back out. Think of what that does to your mental state. Think what that does to the individual. It's already a trying time. Now we're prolonging finding this good fit. And we have a number of things when you come to us at Blue Water about, you know, we spend time talking to guys, making sure that they get into the right mindset. We understand the importance of designing your career progression, understanding what's important to you in life, and making sure that what you're going to pursue is going to preserve those big things, those big rocks in your life, right? Because what we know about this demographic that we're talking about, if they get out of bed every morning, if they are not fulfilled, if they are not doing meaningful work for an organization that they can grow with and respect, they will not stay. You with me? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't care if you're making $1 gajillion a year, you're going to walk away from it. This is just like, life's too short, man. I have to do meaningful work like all of our members do. So, but we don't see anywhere near that number, right? 45%, 44% year over year. But we do track it. What we saw our first 3 years, and I'm going to caveat this, we saw historically about 2%. 2% of our members who landed year over year arrived at a poor fit, right? And then they stepped right back out. They came right back to us, and we walked them through the process again, and they're on to their next success, right? Over the last 12 months, right? The last 12 months, a little bit alarming, right? I mean, we've seen that metric double, right? We've seen that metric grow to almost 5% over the last 12 months. And if I'm honest with you, Scott, I don't know why, right?
I do.
Well, tell me why.
It's the old James Carville thing. It's the economy, stupid.
Well,
I
maybe
mean,
it is the economy.
there's uncertainty I mean, there has just been tremendous layoffs,
Yeah,
from big corporations,
that is
and
true. That is true.
it's kind of snuck under the radar. And in general, it's been an interesting year, and I think
Agreed.
that has individuals maybe kind of reevaluate, look going into situations with more open mind to their own personal fit. And so maybe that's a good
Yeah,
trend that guys are saying, are actually taking your lesson. Hey, if you don't find a good fit, you have an opportunity. You still have the opportunity to find the good fit.
sure.
And so I look at it as a net positive. Whatever the number is, sure, you'd want to find it the first time around, but realistically, I mean, at least from a long-term perspective, we got many years to go before we know those data points. Are people still with their corporation 10 years later?
Yeah.
But just in general, this is, I didn't retire out of the military. I did 6.5 years, and I got out in 2008 during the last financial
Yeah.
crisis. When there was, and so I remember, dealing with, people talking about retirement planning back then. That's kind of was the catalyst for me entering the industry and being really shocked with the amount of uncertainty out there. Coming out of the military, your paycheck, your next duty station, you're going to have one. None of that's a question.
Yeah.
And so, people take
And
their
that's
own path to deciding how much control of
yeah.
creating their own orders in post-military life.
It's a great observation, right? And I think you're probably onto something there, right? And you know the world of data analytics, right? We can see changes in metrics, but the harder part, there's two things that are hard. Why did that change? Understanding that, right? Now you're into a subjective kind of like, well, this is what I think, this is what I think. Or if you then wanted to be proactive and drive that metric, what can I do to change this, right?
Mm.
In the case in point of average pursuit days, I would be very interested at Blue Water. What can we do as an organization to help members find their next success quicker, right? And so that's going to be the next step that we take once we start tightening up our data. Then we start to identify the levers to pull, how we can drive this, right? The whole approach to transition for senior leaders, we're taking a different approach. I don't know anybody else that's doing this, right?
Well,
We're taking the data and the analytics, and I want to know,
yeah.
hey, I want to be able to tell members, if you do these things and we're going to get involved with you, you are likely to drive your time and career progression down. Right?
Yeah, that's what this does. It just shows, hey, you're paying attention to this, therefore you care, and that's going to give them more opportunity to say, all right, am I on track or not? But well, cool.
Hey,
well,
I know you're kind of busy, and we already talked. Just for the listeners out there, we didn't have a ton of time, but I just want to go over. We get a lot of questions. Hey, Mike, where is everybody going? What are members coming through? Because it's a very common thing, right? Hey, I'm getting out. Okay, great. I have no idea what I want to do, right? And so the first yardstick, they always want to go, well, what's everybody else doing, right? Where are they taking? Where are they finding success with the skills that they're taking out to some industry someplace, right? And so we track that, right? And we bucket it up, and I think you're looking at it right there, kind of center screen. But I've written it down. 25%, right? And again, keep in mind this 290 data point, all Navy, right? And we talked about it at the beginning of this thing. This is the bucket that we drew that. 25% of that grouping, right? Or 43 individuals. Keep in mind, we had 150 landing reports in the system. I crunched 20 to 23 more manually, right? So about 43 individuals landed in the commercial bucket. So think everything outside of defense and government contracting. It could be Adobe, Xerox, Google, Microsoft, right? Like 25% of that grouping has landed, right? And this isn't, has landed, in the commercial or the corporate bucket, right? Of the 291 or the 290 total, predictably, I could say it'll be about 73 of those individuals will land in the commercial bucket. And now we're getting into predictive analytics, right? Like, hey, I can see 43 individuals who are actually there in those industries right now. And we could drill down into this metric, and I could tell you what companies that are there, and then I could tell you the individual's name, and then we could go to their landing report and see how long it took them and the network that was about, helped them get there, et cetera. We can keep drilling down. We don't have enough time to do that, but predictively of the 290, about 73 would be there. How many are going to government contracting? How many government contracting firms? 33%. So that's about 57 are there now. 96 predictably, right, would be there of the 290 grouping. It's almost an equal split, right, between the defense and aerospace industry, about another 33%, same numbers there. And then civil service and the other bucket. I combined these, and I think I'm looking on this slide there. It's almost 9%. What do we got? So almost 3%, and it's a little over 6. So it's about 9, maybe a little over 9%. They land in the GS jobs, right? GS 13, 14, 15, right? Maybe some SESs out there. The other bucket is comprised of, like, think nonprofits, or we have a number of individuals that pursue private equity, venture capital pursuits with companies like that and things like that, right? So there's a small fraction that end up there. But again, you can look just, from a 10,000 foot view, and somebody asks the question, where's everybody going, Mike? Well, here's where they're going. This is what they're pursuing, right? And I think that's very helpful, right?
How do you define the difference between government contractor and defense and aerospace?
So for the defense and aerospace industries, I want you to kind of think like Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman. Like, think the big fortune companies, Booz Allen that's out there, Raytheon, right? Think those big companies. For the government contracting bucket, again, Scott McDonald, one of our partners, he's helping us bucket this thing. But think those companies that have, I don't know, somewhere between 250, 350 employees, man, or even smaller in some cases. They do a top line business, maybe 50 million, maybe 10 million, right? Or a little bit less, right? But there's meaningful work in a lot of those companies. Many of them are corporate partners of ours. Like, for example, like Two Circle, right? Or TAC Air, right? We lump those companies into those kind of buckets. TAC Air is a little bit bigger than that. Two Circle is growing as well. But again, it just kind of helps just understand and cage people's gyros on kind of where they're headed and what they're pursuing. And it's almost an equal percentage.
So it might be a way to think of it as also a big corporate, big defense contractor versus small. Or smaller.
That's exactly right. And it's important to kind of break that out, because the feel is going to be completely different, right? I mean, are you going to get a cubicle and just oversee a program and just do it? Or are you going to be in a smaller company, get a title and a seat at the table and be able to, help drive the growth of the company, right? There's a lot of differences, in that. And it just really depends on what individuals are looking for. There can be great, meaningful compensation found throughout that entire spectrum as well, too. So
what about on the commercial side? Because that then is more like the Amazon versus, the local, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, like maybe like the
we have some
Mosquito Joes do. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
some
like
smaller, still got a few hundred employees.
Yeah, there's a company here, AGI, Architectural Graphics Incorporated, right? Like, there's some of these privately owned businesses, right? Family-run businesses, right?
Right.
Some of those opportunities, I'm telling you, Scott, our members kind of gloss over that, but there's meaningful compensation and fulfilling work to do in a lot of businesses like that. It's out there, right? And we're starting to analytically shed some light on that, right? For members to go, wow, I didn't even realize this was an option. Well, yeah, we have a percentage of our members that pursue these opportunities and land there, right? And you could even drill down into it and just see what are these companies if you wanted to do that, right? So
yeah, kind of interesting to see that the civil service is so low when that seems like the obvious transition from military service to civil service. I'm curious if that's just if one, it's really hard. There aren't that many positions available because once somebody's got their federal job, they're not going to let it go. Or is it because most are saying, "Hey, I want to try something new."
Yeah,
different.
I think for the individuals that are drawn to it, it's kind of a long-term play. It really tugs at the fit, right? You still feel like you are a part of the government, and many of individuals, they're going back to the same organization only as a GS, right? I don't think a lot of individuals, once they start looking at it analytically, GS 14, GS 15 roles, and we have the data. I can tell you compensation wise, what that's going to look like over 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. You have to spend a long time in a GS job as compared to stepping into a company that's in defense and aerospace or government contracting, like an Anduril or a Shield AI or something like that, right? Dude, you can work 5 or 8 years in a GS role, what you're going to pull in compensation wise in 1, maybe, 2 years for some of these other companies. Right now, that's harder work, and there's a lot going on there. But so I'm not sure if that plays into what our members want to pursue, but the ones that land there are typically drawn there for the same reason that they were drawn and miss, right, the feel of the uniform. It's paying back to the nation. It's meaningful work, right? It's a good fit for them, and they can still contribute to a lot of the programs that they were plugged in with previously, right? Hey, real quick, I know you're going to run short of time, but I did want to kind of highlight here the lower left corner there. Let's talk about this. And I think this is really interesting. We ask our members when they fill out their landing report, we go, hey, what did you experience, right? What was the offer, right? And when I say what was the offer, not necessarily a dollar amount, but what was it comprised of? Was it comprised of a base pay, a signing bonus, right? In other words, we asked them, frame it out for me. What was presented to you? And then what did you negotiate? And then what were you successful in negotiating above and beyond, right? That. So I've got it up on my desktop here. So the negotiated base salary, keep in mind that grouping of 290 individuals, 175 had landed, 91% of them, almost 92%, right, negotiated their base salary. 46, almost 47% were successful, right, in negotiating their base pay, right? And I'm looking over the top of my other monitor here. So success rate of almost 51%, right?
When you say negotiated, meaning asking for something above.
Yeah, let's just say, Scott, we want you to come work for the company. Here's our written offer letter. It's for $100,000 a year. And you're going to go, hey, I would like to negotiate that. Would you or the company consider me paying that offer plus an additional 20% for a base pay figure of $120,000 a year? Yes, we would. The statistics will tell you 92% of the grouping negotiated. They entered into negotiations on their base pay.
They attempted. Yeah.
And 47% almost were successful. So
it's like you got a 50% chance if you just ask.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Thank you. Right. In other words, why would you not ask? Right? Why would you not ask? Now, here's an interesting one. Everything is negotiable, right? 63, almost 64% negotiated 401k, the matching percentage, right, with the company. Look at that. Not even 1% were successful. Wow. So what's the takeaway? 401k programs most of the time are for the company. Hey, this is the way the company does it. Everybody's treated the same. You can always ask. In fact, I would love to drill down. I can do that and find out who the 1% who were successful in negotiating their 401k, right? But it's
we'll have to do,
right?
We'll have to do an episode on the truth behind 401ks sometime.
Yeah, but here's another one, like negotiated paid time off, PTO, right? This is paid time off, this is vacation. almost, what is it, 61% negotiated it. Okay, 13% were successful. And hang on, that's a success rate. I'm looking behind the monitor here. I can't quite see it, but you get the point. Is some people are successful in negotiating that portion of your offer, right? Signing.
What is the amount of paid time off average these days? Just nationwide.
I could figure that out analytically, right? But just my own observation, it's anywhere from 15 to 20 days, right? Now, I will tell you an interesting trend. Are you ready for this? The Blue Origins, the Andurils, the Shield AI, a lot of these Meta, right? Google, Amazon, Facebook, right? A lot of these big companies, when they send out their offers now for paid time off, right? In other words, this is your vacation time. They say unlimited. Now, you want to look this up and you're going, Mike, are you kidding me? Unlimited? They're going to offer you unlimited time. Look it up. There's a mental science behind this. If I tell you you've only got 20 days of paid time off, you're going to take 20 days throughout the year. If I tell you it's unlimited, just work it out with your direct report. And if you need time off, just coordinate it with him and take your time off. On average, you're going to take less time off than if I put a limit on it, right? You're going to be harder on yourself than the company is going to be on you. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of genius, right?
That, and I think the other motivation behind it is, people are going to be more focused on what they're doing and feeling like they've earned their days off when they want to take it. But
yeah. So again, I know we've already been at this now for quite a few minutes here, but just for the listener, right? I just wanted to share a few of these analytics, right? And we can go all the way down the list. You can see, our members negotiate all kind of things, right? Hey, if you're in a big city, you better negotiate parking, right? Vacation, right? Cell phone stipend, right? I mean,
a big one I don't see on here. What about the work from home?
Not really what I would call a benefit or a direct or indirect form of compensation, but that goes more into just the structure, right, that the company's willing to absorb. I'm starting to see, if I was just teasing out my own insight, right, there's a pull for companies wanting people back in the workforce.
Oh, yeah.
I think maybe 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, work from home, it was almost the going in assumption that all, work was going to be from home. Now, there's a pull. Companies are telling people, hey, we want you as a workforce back in for a period of time. Hybrid is still, an option out there. But what I would tell members, if you're stepping into negotiations, everything is negotiable, right? Everything. Hey, how often do you need me in the office, right?
Right.
Would you entertain a portion of this work to be done, right? Work from home or in a hybrid situation. You don't know the answers to the questions until you ask, right?
Right.
In many cases. So anyway, I just wanted to share all this stuff with you, Scott. I don't know if you guys find this interesting or not, right? But we're continuing to tease this out, and we're seeing some interesting results. And it just forces us just to kind of be more aware of, hey, what is the experience, right, that our members are going through, right?
No, I think it's a huge tool and adds a level of comfort and some focus on hey, I didn't even realize I could negotiate for this thing, or I hadn't thought about that industry or whatever. So
which that's a great segue. You and I've got to do that workshop tutorial on negotiating compensation. That is the absolute next one we have to do, because I've had 2 conversations just yesterday with members who are right at that point, right? And how we remind them, right? Hey, here's what you would have heard at our cohort, but as a review, and then this is what they're hungry for is, hey, I want to negotiate this, Mike. How do I do it? And we have the language and the approach to walk members through that. And we've got to get that down in the video tutorial.
No, let's do it. No, awesome,
Yeah,
man. No, I think this is, great. I've been hearing you talk about the stats and stuff, so really cool to see it, on charts and graphs, and yeah, looking forward to seeing how the numbers adjust, as you go from here.
yeah.
But
I'm sure they will, right?
very
I told you I'm hypersensitive, right? I never want to kind of have anybody approach me and go, oh, you're just making this data up. Oh, no, 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 no. But when you do look at so many data points, the quality of input you get, sometimes it's spot on, sometimes it's a little squishy. Sometimes you look at it and go, man, did this person really even read the question right? Like, you're giving us data back. And so, like you and I talked about, sometimes let's just take a straight average, or let's just look at all the inputs, and then you're going, okay, let's remove 2 standard deviations away, and let's just kind of look at that data and compare and contrast it. And we're doing our best to give the best insight that we can based on the responses that we get from our members, right? So
well.
there's
Yeah.
value in there. I think ultimately it's going to continue to get tighter and tighter as we go forward. So we're excited about it.
No, absolutely. Well, no, I think it's going to be a huge tool for anybody coming to work with you to help gauge where they're at in their process, and maybe put a little pep in the step. Say, all right, get it going. But no, awesome, Mike. No, really, really proud of you, and excited that you're having this much success with your members. And just honored to be able to be able to be working with you. And one thing, back to that civil service situation, if this whole Elon Musk thing goes down, there's going to be some big government downsides. You might have to expand Blue Water to help federal employees get out into the workplace. In which case, they'll be leaving federal service, and they're gonna need something to do with their thrift savings plans. And we've got our
They need to come see you. They need to come see you.
So federal employees are looking for a career change. You want to protect that TSP. I've got a book about it. So the TSP rollover blueprint. So we want to protect what you've earned.
Are stepping into career progression. You're going to have questions on survivor benefit plan and building that war chest. Listen, don't just go see Scott, right? Just go talk to Scott. We'll help you build the revenue stream for that by helping you navigate to your next success. But Scott's going to help you build the war chest and protect it as you go forward, right? So,
right.
It's a great match. So,
yeah, we're about protection, not investing in the markets. There's lots of other firms and professionals that do that very well. It's about insurance is about guaranteeing what you already got, either future income streams or assets you've already accumulated. So I think it fits really well.
Quick, Scott, if I could segue, right? It's right before Thanksgiving. So, I've got a lot to be thankful for, right? I'm thankful for you and your bride, Jen, right? And the partnership over the years, right? That's been really special, right? We've continued to grow and scale. And so I love your efforts in doing things like this. I'm thankful for all of our members. Right. I mean, it's just amazing that we're growing our membership, this big, and 2025 looks really exciting. So listen, I just want you to have a wonderful Thanksgiving, and for all of our members and listeners out there, have a great Thanksgiving. Be safe, everybody. And we're almost to the new year. Can you believe it? 2024 is almost gone. It's just hard to believe. It's amazing.
Yeah. And you can be thankful that you're going to be cat sitting now. That'll be fun.
Yeah, for our listeners, right? I mean, I got a son on deployment, and the daughter-in-law is coming up. She's getting ready to go on debt. And so, yes, we will be taking care of not 1, but 2 cats for a few months. So that's going to be exciting. So we'll see.
No. But no, Mike, you said it very well. Can't say it any better. So thank you, of course, as well for allowing me to peek behind the curtains with you a little bit. I've learned so much about the military retirement process and the concerns and needs that individuals have around their income streams, and understanding that, especially from the senior leader perspective, because they've kind of been left out in the wind all these years when it comes to the military transition process. It's like it's more than a process, and I think that's what you're bringing to the table. The data shows it, man. But awesome, dude. Well, happy Thanksgiving to you as well. And to everyone out there, we will chat with you probably next week.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Take care, Mike. Yep.
Yeah.